Here are the most legendary hero versus villain fights from movies.
The orders are on their way.
By which time I shall be gone, and you shall be dead.
Kicking things off with a clash as epic as this one can only serve as an indicator of how intense this list is going to be. Dumbledore and Voldemort are kinda like the yin and yang of the Harry Potter universe, and to be honest, I'm sure tons of movie fanatics were just waiting to see it on the big screen. We finally got that in Order of the Phoenix, and even though it wasn't as long as we would have liked it to be, it was still a crazy display of magical powers. Both parties showed off some serious skills, especially Voldemort, who literally spat out a flame snake dragon. Of course, Dumbledore ain't no pushover, which was quite evident from the way he managed to not only hold off those attacks, but also give it back with an added dose of sass. Sure, there was a brief moment where it felt like Dumbledore was going to get caught lacking, but he made a good enough recovery to consider this fight a legit draw. Plus, we also need to consider that protecting Harry was his main priority. Man, the effects here were so good. It really makes you wonder why we don't try to revive this style in modern films as well. For everyone who says that there weren't any badass female characters back in the day, just take the name of Sarah Connor. Well, there's Ellen Ripley too amongst others, but the queen of the Terminator franchise is in focus today, so we're looking at the final face-off between her and the T-800. I know most people think of Terminator 2 when it comes to this series, where Sarah's actually even more of a badass, but this scene in particular marks her transition from damsel in distress to main character. She had Kyle Reese for support in the beginning, and the poor guy did try his best to defeat Mr. Schwarzenegger, but unfortunately, that wasn't to be. I think that worked out great here for Miss Connor because it allowed her to defeat the villain like a total savage. It was pretty satisfying to see her end the T-800 because it just felt right after all the context we got in the movie. James Cameron did a lot for the world of cinema here, and even though the animation may not have aged well in terms of the modern era, it was still an absolute treat for people to watch back in the 80s. It was a definitive moment for Sarah Connor, and it shaped her up to become a legacy character. If you're aware of the Mr. Miyagi meme but don't know where it came from, well, here it is. The final battle between Johnny and Daniel was an epic showdown that would redefine the whole martial arts concept for movies and television. I mean, we have Cobra Kai as the main example of this genre, and to be honest with you, I think the scene became more memorable because of the camaraderie towards the end after Daniel wins. Sure, it's got the whole vibe of the hero struggling against the villain at first, only to turn it around and emerge victorious. However, when we see Johnny congratulating Daniel for beating him, it just goes to show that Mr. Miyagi was right when he said that it's the teacher who matters when it comes to determining how a student turns out. The fight choreography was good, but definitely not anything too phenomenal, so yeah, once again, it's the overall presentation of the scene that works out for this movie. The remake with Jackie Chan and Jaden Smith also did justice to it, but I still say you can't ever top an OG.
You're a monster, Zod. And I'm gonna stop you.
Zack Snyder being given control over the DCEU could have really paid off for the execs at Warner Brothers, but unfortunately, things didn't work out the way they could have. It's a real shame too, considering how Man of Steel did a lot of things right when it came to portraying a darker take on the superhero genre. General Zod was a perfect villain for this film, and the final battle against Kal-El was a spectacle to behold for everyone who was dying for some hard-hitting content. Now, I could go on about the destruction these two caused all over the city. What I find to be more important is the fact that Superman had to take Zod's life to end the battle. He really wasn't left with an option, since Zod wanted him to make a choice, even if it turned out to be the last thing he ever did. Snapping his neck was definitely the most difficult thing the Man of Steel would have to do, but it also presented the audience with a fresh take on how superheroes can behave when all odds are against them. The anti-hero excuse wasn't going to work here, so everyone just had to sit there and digest the fact that the world's strongest superhero just killed someone.
Never.
Optimus Prime had a hard time against Megatron in the first Transformers movie, which made the audience a bit skeptical as to why he was so underpowered. Well, all of that changed in the movies that came after, especially Dark of the Moon, where Optimus basically rips Megatron to shreds as if he was just a spare tire. The main battle in the beginning is actually against Sentinel Prime, who turned out to be the main villain of the movie, but Optimus needed a little support from Megatron to end him, so I can't really give him full credit for that.
You didn't betray me. You betrayed yourself.
No, Optimus!
What's really funny though is that after Megatron pretty much incapacitates Sentinel Prime, he looks at Optimus as if to say, "We good?" Sadly for him, Optimus went on to totally wreck and destroy Megatron without any mercy at all, basically answering him with, "Nah bruh." It was a pretty savage display, and it further highlighted just how OP Optimus has become over the years. To be honest, I don't even think he should have needed any support to defeat Sentinel, but I guess Megatron spent most of the movie on the sidelines, so the director at least had to give him some kind of limelight. Gladiator 2 only did one thing right. It made me realize just how amazing the OG Gladiator was in 2000. Man, watching this movie reminded me of all the good times we used to have as film lovers back when there wasn't any silly interference from incompetent charlatans. Anyway, the final battle between Maximus and Commodus was befitting its audience, which was essentially the grandest stage in the capital. The fight was raw and full of emotions, so we genuinely wanted to root for Russell Crowe to make a Joker out of Joaquin Phoenix. Not only did he manage to do that in the film, but he also set the precedent in the real world for 19 years later. Defeating and taking Commodus' life was extremely satisfying as a viewer because he was way too unlikable to be given any sympathy at all. Bro was Joffrey Baratheon before Game of Thrones even became a thing. Let's not forget that our hero won despite having one of his lungs pretty much destroyed. That's some anime level savagery right there.
Smile for me now, brother.
I also like how Maximus is almost dying after beating his opponent, but suddenly goes, "Wait, let me just fix the Roman Empire real quick. Quintus, reinstate the senator." Alright, back to dying, folks. Now, this is what a mega monster battle should look like. Sure, Godzilla vs. Kong gave us a couple of really neat encounters, but when you see the monster vs. two most iconic titans working together to defeat an oversized monkey and a brutal ice beast, yeah, Scar King may not have been too impressive as a villain, but I will give props to Shimo for being a badass introduction to the series. The teamwork on display from Godzilla and Kong was also cool to watch, because we need to remember that these are oversized monsters at the end of the day, so we shouldn't really expect Matrix level planning from their side. Seeing evolved Godzilla in action with his atomic breath was crazy, especially with the way he was able to handle an absolute brute like Shimo. But of course, it's Kong who gets bragging rights for ending Scar King's dominance over his slave beast. I feel these scenes could have used a bit more of Godzilla's powers, but I guess they didn't want him to end Shimo, so they mostly had the king of the monsters doing damage control and protecting Kong. All in all, it is still a terrific sequence.
Don't you have anything new? How about this?
You know, people really like to hate on The Dark Knight Rises for its switching of primary villains towards the end of the movie, but even so, it remains a billion-dollar earner. If you could do that for a film you didn't like, then why didn't Batman Begins get more recognition despite being a better movie? This is literally how Bruce Wayne became Batman, and it's got some amazing sequences, such as the train fight between the Dark Knight and his master Ra's al Ghul. Now, I know that he's supposed to be the bad guy here, but spare a thought for the teacher. He spent 7 years training Bruce just to see him cosplay as a bat. There must have been some serious disappointment there, but as far as the fighting's concerned, it's safe to say that the student has at least matched the master, if not become him. I say this because Ra's al Ghul only lost the fight because he got distracted by Gordon sabotaging his grand plan.
Weapon system activated.
Nice ride.
The dude was able to hold his own against Batman till then, so I just wanted to be fair. The direction was great considering they showcased the fight inside a moving train, and the way Batman flies off by spreading his wings was the perfect middle finger he could have given to his sensei.
I won't kill you. But I don't have to save you.
Rama is amongst the best Asian fighters you're ever going to see in cinema, but the fight against Mad Dog proves that even he isn't undefeatable. Mad Dog was able to take on Rama as well as his brother Andy at the same time, and it was only for an immense struggle that they managed to beat him. Yeah, this surely cements Mad Dog as the toughest villain when it comes to raw human power. Moreover, I personally think this is a top 5 fight scene of all time. It's not just about the attacking moves, but also about how the music builds with the desperation and intensity. The guy is clearly more skilled and powerful than both of our heroes put together, so it really shows how much they have to give here and that every single move they make matters. It's a super close fight which keeps the viewers on the edge of their seats, so it ticks all the boxes for an S-tier fight. Man, the way Mad Dog just got stronger and faster with each blow made it feel as if Rama and Andy were fighting the final boss of a video game who goes berserk just before he's about to be ended.
Stark.
You know me?
I do. You're not the only one cursed with knowledge.
My only curse is you.
Come on!
This fight may not have ended the way we would have wanted it to, but it was still a great fight nonetheless, so it qualifies for the list. It's the most action we'll get to see from the nanobot suit in the film, and it didn't disappoint at all, even though it was up against the most overpowered villain in the entirety of the MCU. Nobody would have bet their money on Iron Man to win this fight, other than probably emotional pressure, and I wouldn't blame them either, because remember, the Hulk and Thor combined couldn't do anything to him earlier. Yeah, I know they kind of messed up with Thor's power levels throughout the movie, but it still counts, doesn't it? Also, the visual effects were on a whole other level, especially with the way Tony Stark was deflecting all of those power beams. He gave a great fight to the Mad Titan and even landed a scratch to make him bleed, which is already a level above what Hulk could do. The ending of the fight also had all the fans praying to God that Iron Man somehow survives. So yeah, it was super high impact.
You have my respect, Stark. When I'm done, half of humanity will still be alive. I hope they remember you.
Yeah, super. Come on, let's go faster. Helicopter's right down there. Come on, let's go.
This is the movie that changed the face of action films in the modern era of filmmaking, and I'm all for it. John Wick gave the world what it needed the most during a time of comic book overload. Brutal assassinations. He's no hero by any stretch of the imagination, having been called the Baba Yaga or the Boogeyman by even Russian mafia, which is kinda like the highest honor you can receive as a killer. Having said that, the man loves dogs, and this movie shows us exactly what happens when you take that away from him. The final fight against Vigar was good from a combat perspective, but it was the culmination of Jon's vengeance that made it more special. I also can't help but respect Vigo to an extent. He knows he stands no chance against Jon, but still tries to match him hand to hand. He never lost respect for Jon, and it was clear that he wasn't only angry at his son Joseph for signing their death warrants, but because he also did it to someone he respects greatly and admittedly owed most of his success in crime to. Someone he'd call a friend. Damn, I think I went a bit too deep there, didn't I?
Where is she? Oh, she'll be just fine. Let's talk.
Can you really have a list like this without Spider-Man on it? Doc Ock was an upgrade from the Green Goblin, which is a compliment and a half considering how much of an impact William Dafoe made as Norman Osborn. Amongst the many other things that made Otto so good was the fact that he became an excellent fighter due to his mechanical arms. Fighting Spidey on the train was a highlight from the entire film, and the action was amazing, especially if you consider how it was from 20 years ago. This is also from an era where CGI wasn't so dominant, which means a lot of it was done practically. We all know about the legendary rescue Peter Parker pulls off after this, but it's the fight I want to focus on, which works amazingly well with the different placements throughout the scene. Once again, this isn't a fight where the hero is the victor or anything. You could call it maybe a draw, but it's all about the process that makes it memorable. Okay, so I was a little confused here as to which fight I should include from the Winter Soldier because there is two of them. I decided to go ahead with the highway fight because it's the first time Captain America fights against the Winter Soldier, and more importantly, doesn't know he's up against Bucky until the very end. This meant that both of them could actually fight each other properly, unlike in the finale where Steve Rogers was mostly just trying to complete his mission rather than fight his old buddy. The highway battle had both super soldiers giving it their all in an intensely coordinated sequence that definitely lifted the spirits of everyone back when they first watched it in the cinemas. You can see Bucky's intent to kill, whereas Steve is more focused on subduing his opponent, making it a clash of contrasting styles. The hand-to-hand combat was brilliant enough on its own, but even minor tweaks like the knife flip totally enhanced the moment for everyone involved.
It's the street fight. It's a question of who wants it most. What is he doing? He's waiting.
It's time to revisit another classic in the form of Rocky IV. This was a highly emotional film because of how they killed off Apollo Creed right at the beginning of the movie and instantly gave Rocky the motivation to step into that ring and get his revenge. The technicalities of this fight were often thrown off because of how both Rocky and Drago ignored the rules to keep going at each other like wild animals. But that's what made it more personal for the characters as well as the audience. The final round, where Rocky blatantly urged Drago to smack him in the face, was the ultimate savagery I've seen in a boxing ring. Rocky wasn't blocking those blows with his face, he was hitting Drago's fists with it. There's a big difference there, you know. It was so thrilling to watch at home, so I can only imagine how it must have been for everyone who saw it on the big screen. Seeing Drago finally go down after Rocky's rampage was so satisfying to watch, even though we all know there's no way Sylvester Stallone could ever stand a chance against Dolph Lundgren. Top 10 entries always bring out the best in me, so here's the 1966 classic The Good, the Bad and the Ugly, presenting its final duel to the world. I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Sergio Leone took a scene where three men stare at each other and turned it into the most epic showdown in film history. Clint Eastwood is always a legend when it comes to westerns, but even looking at characters like Tuco and Angel Eyes, you're kinda almost rooting for them at the same time. Man, I enjoyed watching this so much that I felt bad that I wouldn't ever be able to see it again for the first time. The way suspense is built here really needs to be studied, because for a vast majority of 9 whole minutes, there's no action at all. That's like a year's worth of Gen Z kids' attention span. A man like Arnold Schwarzenegger has been an enduring name for himself thanks to all the blockbusters he's been in. Amongst them, the Terminator franchise is easily the lengthiest and most beloved series, so you can imagine how upset he would have been to see the T-1000 trying to copy what he did in the first film. Naturally, this led to an epic fight between the robots, with the T-800 eventually coming out on top with a surprise shotgun attack. I think what really works for this battle is that both the fighters are robots, so you don't really see them squealing in pain or making extreme facial expressions while they're fighting. Yeah, the T-1000 screams a lot when he melts in the lava, but other than that, he's as cool as a cucumber. It makes the fight seem unreal, which in turn makes it more memorable. Star Wars was once mocked for losing quality after the prequel trilogy came out, but after retrospective reviews and the mess that came from 2015 onwards, I'd say they were actually pretty impressive. I mean, we got to see Obi-Wan Kenobi face off against Anakin Skywalker in what I believe is the best duel the franchise has ever given us. Both the actors really put in a lot of effort while training for this sequence, and it does show. More than anything else, the constant shifting of places further enhanced the already impressive lightsaber fighting. Obi-Wan eventually came out on top, but the sadness that hit us all right after simply can't be put into words. We know this kicks off the sequence when Anakin turns into Darth Vader, but even then, to see him screaming, "I hate you," to his friend and tutor was just heartbreaking.
Happy trails, Hans.
You know, everyone keeps talking about how Mariah Carey is the undisputed queen of Christmas with her infinite money glitch during season time. However, I think we need to talk more about John McClane in Die Hard, which is arguably the best Christmas movie ever made. Seeing him face off against Hans Gruber was a delight, not because of the physical fighting or anything like that, but how he manages to get one over the villain in a split second. It really was an exciting moment for everyone watching because nobody really expected John to be able to pull it off. Alan Rickman's acting is on point as well, with Hans Gruber being totally shocked and bamboozled right before he falls to his demise. We started off this video with Dumbledore against Voldemort, and we kick off the top 5 with the ultimate battle from the Harry Potter film universe. Taking on Voldemort is no easy task when you're the main character of the story, which can be seen here as Harry really struggled to keep up with his opponent. Luckily for him, he had his friends to help out wherever they could, especially Neville, who essentially landed the decisive blow. Of course, seeing Harry and Voldemort fight in the air and also clash their wands was an epic sight too. Man, I really miss the good old days when we'd be so hyped for movies like this one. That feeling just doesn't exist anymore. I did mention Ellen Ripley in the Sarah Connor entry, so you should have expected to see her come up somewhere. Well, If she's fighting the literal queen of the xenomorphs, then she really can't be put anywhere other than the top. This scene wasn't just about a kick-ass line or a brutal battle between woman, machine and monster, but also about showcasing how much Ripley has grown from a terrified astronaut in the first Alien film to a badass warrior in its sequel. She totally owns this scene with her entrance and the fight itself, but unfortunately, we haven't really seen anything remotely close from this franchise ever since. Never trust an agent, which is why I always follow Neo's philosophy and beat the living daylights out of him whenever he tries to sell something to me. On a serious note though, this was the big battle of the Matrix and it satisfied everyone perfectly. It follows the tried and tested trope of having the hero struggle, then get enlightened, and then totally dominate the villain. Since we saw it for the first time from this series, it worked like a charm. And I still can't get Keanu Reeves with all that sass blocking Agent Smith without even looking at his face. It's legendary stuff. Would you ever consider this entry to be lower than number 2? I mean, this moment lasted for a whole half hour and gave the audience the culmination of efforts that started way back in 2008. Taking on Thanos and his army with all the heroes we've cheered for and supported for over a decade was the highest point the MCU could have ever achieved, and I honestly don't think they can ever match this energy ever again. Not that they need to anyway, because we as fans are more than grateful to have witnessed such a great event with our own eyes.
No, give me that. You have the little one.
Well, we saw Anakin not too long ago, so here's a top 5 greatest villain of all time, Darth Vader. Now, the fight may have been impressive on its own, but we need to realize that Darth Vader was in control the entire time.
You have learned much, young one.
You'll find I'm full of surprises.
He simply didn't want to hurt his own son and would have preferred to have him join the dark side. His empathy can be felt all over the scene once you look at it from that perspective, but even so, it's the most crucial scene from the entire franchise, as it not only includes an iconic line, but also the moment of truth for Star Wars' main hero. Hope you liked the video, please subscribe to the TV Regent, and here's another video that I know you're going to enjoy.